Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday to everybody. I'm going to start today with a statement attributable to the spokesperson for the Secretary General on Nigeria. The Secretary General welcomes the release on the 17th of December of some of the children who were abducted from a secondary school in Katsina State, Nigeria, on the 11th of December. He commends the swift action taken by the Nigerian authorities to rescue the children and calls for the immediate and unconditional release of those who remain abducted. He stresses the importance that the released children and their families are provided with the necessary health and psychosocial support. The Secretary General calls for increased efforts to safeguard schools and educational facilities in the country and reiterates the solidarity and commitment of the United Nations to supporting the government and people of Nigeria in their fight against terrorism, violent extremism, and organized crime. And we also have a statement today from UNICEF concerning the release of the children. This morning, the Secretary General addressed the members of the Bundestag. In his speech, which the Secretary General delivered in German, a first for him, he stressed how German thinking, leadership, and vision have helped to shape his political life. He praised Germany for being a pillar of multilateralism, saying that it is clear that global challenges require global solutions. However, he noted that we face a deficit of international cooperation, and in many places people are closing their minds. As we look ahead, he said, we need multilateralism that delivers and reform of governance structures that is based on present realities and future-focused, not one stuck in the world of 75 years ago. And a few minutes ago, the Secretary General spoke to the German press after his virtual meeting with Chancellor Angela Merkel. He said that international cooperation has been tested this year like never before, but through decisive action, the Chancellor and Germany have showed the world what global solidarity looks like. He praised Germany's leadership, both domestically and globally, in taking on the COVID-19 challenge, as well as for their generous support for the ACT Accelerator to develop tools to fight the pandemic. He also thanked Germany for guiding the European Union towards enhanced climate ambition as well as a greener budget. The Secretary General said he discussed a number of crisis situations with the Chancellor, including Libya, where she and Germany have played a pivotal role in forging peace. Across the board, we have come to rely on Germany's principled stance and leadership, he said. Those remarks have been sent to you. On Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more than 6 weeks since the start of the conflict in Tigray, many people in the region have still not received assistance, despite some limited recent deliveries by some UN agencies. As we told you this week, the International Organization for Migration has delivered aid to Tigray border areas. The World Food Programme has sent some food into camps in Tigray. We continue to call for immediate and unfettered access to all areas where people have been affected by the fighting. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that although electricity and telecommunications are intermittently working in Tigray's capital, Mekelle, people in many other parts of the region are still lacking access to food, water, cash, power, and telecommunications. In neighboring Sudan, between 200 and 300 refugees continue to arrive from Ethiopia every day. As of yesterday, nearly 51,100 refugees had crossed the border in search of safety and assistance. The UN mission in Libya, UNSMIL, condemns the recent threats made by armed groups against the National Oil Corporation and its subsidiary, the Brega Petroleum Marketing Company, based in Tripoli. The National Oil Corporation is and must remain a unified, independent, and apolitical institution that works for the benefit of all Libyans. These actions may constitute a violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and those responsible could be subject to sanctions. The mission adds that Libya's oil production has already suffered serious setbacks in 2020 due to the protracted oil blockade, which was lifted only 3 months ago, and which resulted in the irretrievable loss of $11 billion in sales. The United Nations has airlifted supplies for thousands of people in Somalia's Puntland region who have been affected by Cyclone Gati, the strongest tropical cyclone ever recorded in the country. Cyclone Gati made landfall late last month and brought 2 years' worth of rainfall in just a few days. More than 180,000 people have been affected, with some 42,000 people having been displaced from their homes. Over the last 3.5 decades, Somalia has experienced 15 tropical storms and cyclones, together with flash floods. Extreme weather events are part of a global pattern of stronger storms caused by climate change and warmer ocean temperatures. In Somalia, Cyclone Gati is resulting in a humanitarian emergency, which compounds existing challenges, including conflict, the COVID-19 pandemic, and desert locusts. The UN Refugee Agency is providing supplies, including mosquito nets, solar lamps, and blankets, for 36,000 people in the hard-hit Bari region. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, wrapped up a week-long mission to the Democratic Republic of the Congo today, with a visit to Sake, close to Goma. In this location, the mission has built an isolation camp to enable contingent rotations in the context of COVID-19. While in the DRC, Mr. Lacroix visited two remote localities in the east of the country. He went to Pinga in North Kivu, where the population is affected by fighting between two factions of an armed group, the NDCR. He also went to Roe in Ituri, where thousands of displaced people have gathered around a temporary MONUSCO base to flee intercommunal violence. Mr. Lacroix reiterated the mission's commitment to protect Congolese civilians, while noting the need to continue working on the root causes of conflict and community reconciliation. In his meetings with the governors of the two provinces, local authorities, and civil society, he said that MONUSCO would continue supporting the Congolese people in their initiatives to restore state authority and to build a more stable and peaceful country. Prior to visiting the East, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations was in Kinshasa, where he met President Felix Tshisekedi, representatives of the political parties, as well as civil society, human rights, women, and religious groups. In the context of the current political situation and the global COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Lacroix reiterated the need to expeditiously identify solutions for stable and functioning institutions. The UN mission in the Central African Republic, MINUSCA, reports that there is a tense security and political situation in the country ahead of the general elections scheduled for the 27th of December. Early this morning, armed combatants, including suspected members of the armed group 3R, simultaneously attacked the towns of Bosembele and Yaloke, both located northwest of Bangui. Our colleagues on the ground have received initial reports of ongoing exchanges of fire between combatants and national defense forces. Peacekeepers have deployed several quick reaction force personnel from Bouar, Bangui, and Pawa towards the area. The UN mission also met with former President Francois Bozize yesterday. He reiterated he is not instigating violence in the country. The UN mission denounces any alliances between political actors, parties, and armed groups that could threaten national stability and the holding of peaceful elections throughout the country. Turning to Mozambique, the UN and its partners today launched an appeal for $254 million to provide urgently needed assistance and protection to 1.1 million people affected by violence, conflict, and insecurity in Cabo Delgado and neighboring provinces in 2021. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the crisis in Cabo Delgado rapidly escalated in 2020, with attacks and fighting forcing people from their homes. Nearly 530,000 people are now internally displaced in Cabo Delgado, Nampula, and Niassa, almost 5 times the number registered in March 2020. The humanitarian coordinator for Mozambique, Mirta Collard, raised concerns about the plight of children and women. She warned that women and girls are at risk of abduction, gender-based violence, and exploitation, while boys are at risk of being killed or recruited by armed actors. For its part, the UN Refugee Agency today said it is working to identify and address the main needs of the displaced people and host communities, as well as to ensure that basic international humanitarian principles are upheld. UNHCR's assistance for displaced populations in support of the government of Mozambique, including shelter materials, core relief items such as sleeping mats, blankets, kitchen sets, and solar lamps. Turning to South Sudan, new analysis shows that 60% of the people in the country, or some 7.2 million people, will face severe acute food insecurity and will need urgent assistance. According to the latest Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Report, some 1.4 million people under the age of 5 are expected to be acutely malnourished in 2021, the highest number in 3 years. The humanitarian coordinator in South Sudan, Alan Nodehu, said that it has been a truly difficult year for people of the country, which have been hit hard by a second consecutive year of major flooding, widespread violence, and COVID-19 related restrictions. Related to this, 3 UN agencies today called for immediate access to parts of Pibor County in Jonglei State, where people have run out of food and are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the UN Children's Fund, and the World Food Programme, together with their partners, are scaling up their response. They stress that humanitarian assistance is needed to save lives and avert a total collapse of livelihoods in hard-to-reach areas. We have an update on the situation in Fiji, following yesterday's landfall of Cyclone Yasa, the strongest to hit the country since 2016. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that at least 2 people were killed and nearly 23,500 people are seeking shelter in evacuation centers. There are reports of heavy destruction due to infrastructure, buildings, and agricultural areas. The UN and our partners are supporting the government's initial assessments of what is needed. The World Food Programme is supporting emergency telecommunications, UNICEF is providing nutrition supplies, and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is working with authorities to support information management. UNICEF is working to transport up to 850 tons of COVID-19 vaccines per month in 2021, should such quantities of vaccine become available. This is more than double the average weight of vaccines that UNICEF transports every month. The agency's new assessment looked at global air freight capacity and transport routes. It found that commercial airlines will be able to deliver vaccines to nearly all 92 low and lower middle income countries, which are among the 190 economies participating in the COVAX facility, at an estimated cost of up to $70 million. More on this on UNICEF's website. Early this year, the Food and Agriculture Organization launched a campaign to raise awareness as well as funding to help control the desert locust upsurge in the Horn of Africa. So far, our colleagues at the FAO say the response has been very good, with $200 million raised and more than 1.3 million hectares of locust infestations treated in 10 countries. However, widespread seasonal rains have caused extensive breeding of locusts in eastern Ethiopia and Somalia, and a new generation of desert locust swarms is now threatening to affect food security in these vulnerable areas. Breeding is also underway on both sides of the Red Sea, posing a new threat to Eritrea, Saudi Arabia, the Sudan, and Yemen. In response, FAO is now seeking an additional $40 million to increase surveillance and control activities in the most affected countries, that is, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, the Sudan, and Yemen, where more than 35 million people are already acutely food insecure. FAO warns that we shouldn't consider the desert locust crisis resolved. If we let up, the new storms will undo all previous progress made. Today is World Arabic Day, which is intended to raise awareness of the history, culture, and development of the language by preparing a program of special events and activities. On this day, the Secretary General said in a message, "We appreciate the Arabic language, which has been a catalyst for the production and dissemination of knowledge and helped transfer scientific and philosophical knowledge of Greek and Roman to Europe in the Renaissance. It also allowed the establishment of intercultural dialogue along the land and sea routes of the Silk Road from the coast of India to the Horn of Africa." And today is International Migrants Day. In his message, the Secretary General said that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, millions upon millions of people have experienced emotions felt by migrants: the pain of separation from friends and family, the uncertainty of employment, and the need to adapt to a new and unfamiliar reality. He added that we have also come to appreciate our dependence on those who are too often invisible within our communities. The Secretary General said we must ensure that migrants, irrespective of their legal status, are included in every country's pandemic response, particularly in health and vaccination programming. He called on the international community to seize the opportunity of the recovery from the pandemic to implement the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, reimagine human mobility, enable migrants to reignite economies at home and abroad, and build more inclusive and resilient societies. And that is it from me. I will now turn to your questions. Iftikhar, you have a question.
Thank you, Farhan. According to the Pakistan Foreign Office, Indian troops today specifically targeted a UN vehicle carrying two UNMO officers from across the line of control in disputed Kashmir region. The officers, according to the report, escaped unhurt, but the vehicle was damaged. Do you have any information or comments on this incident?
Yes, at this stage, yes, I believe that the details we have are, in fact, that there was no one hurt, but there has been a vehicle damaged in an incident, and the mission is currently investigating the incident. And that is what I have for you for now. Are there any other questions? Please send any questions into chat if you have anything. Yoshita, you have a question?
Can you hear me, Farhan?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. So just on the question asked by Mr. Iftikhar, the Indian government sources have said that Pakistan is saying that it was an Indian. Hello, sorry, it's
Yeah.
my. Sorry. So, yeah, the Indian government's reaction has been that the reports that are emerging from Pakistan regarding the attack on the UN vehicle is completely false and factually incorrect. And there was no firing from the Indian side in this sector. And the sources also said that since movements of UN vehicles are known in advance, the question does not arise. So, is the UN there aware of this Indian reaction to what the Pakistanis are alleging?
We're aware of what both sides have been saying. At this stage, we're simply aware that a vehicle was hit by an unidentified object. Like I said, no one was harmed in this incident, but a vehicle sustained some damage, and we are investigating the incident. All right. And Toby from NHK.
Hi, thanks, Farhan. I just want to ask if there's any more specific logistical information on the, or just technical information on the UNICEF vaccine deployment. Is there anything else? Where did that information, is it a formal report or is it just a statement?
It's a formal report. If you go to the UNICEF website, you can get some more information about this, but they have been looking into this, and there is a press release out, and you'll find some more details there. James, you have a question? James Reinl?
Yeah, sure, Farhan. Thanks so much. My question is about this big cyber attack. Some people say it's the biggest one ever on the US government, few federal agencies, not just US systems, Canadian, Mexican, some Europeans, Israel, UAE, and so on. Might have come from Russia. There's evidence to that, suggests that, but we don't know for sure. What's the UN position on this? I've looked through the records. I don't see a single General Assembly Security Council resolution related to cyber hacking. Does the UN think that cyber hacking, is it just fair game?
No, not at all. We believe that there's an importance that all nations preserve cybersecurity, and the Secretary General has made that clear. This is also an issue on which different parts of the UN, including the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, have weighed in, and they've made clear the need to protect different countries' facilities from cyber attacks. And so that's a general policy across the board.
So the responsibility, as you put it, is on defense. It isn't on the nations that are backing the attacks themselves.
Well, obviously, we are trying to discourage any nations from compromising the cyber facilities of other nations, and so that is their responsibility. Thanks. Dulcie is not able to unmute, but she asked, I would like to know what the UN plan is to distribute vaccine to UN personnel in New York City. And we are in touch with local authorities, including city authorities and state authorities. And we'll see what we can do once there is a vaccine available. In general, of course, what we've made clear is that the Secretary General has called for a people's vaccine, as he did today in the Bundestag. We're continuing to study the situation in regard to vaccines. In major UN duty stations, we expect that UN staff and their dependents will rely on national vaccination programs and adhere to established prioritization policies in each nation. We're in the planning stages of this, but in places where it's not possible for staff and their dependents to obtain the vaccine through national programs, we will endeavor to make the vaccine available. And Evelyn says she also has a question but can't unmute. Evelyn, please text me your question and I'll try to answer that.
Evelyn's unmuted.
Oh, okay. Evelyn, go ahead. Hi, I can't hear you. What are you saying, Evelyn?
She's having connection issues.
Oh, okay. Josie asked how we make the vaccine available to duty stations. That's something we'll have to see what happens as we go ahead. Again, that would be in places where it's not possible to obtain the vaccine through national programs. In general, UN staff throughout in each nation will do this following the policies of each individual nation. But we'll have to see how we make it available otherwise. And with that, I wish you all a happy weekend. Have a good one. Take care. And now you'll stay on the line, and Brendan Varma will be here to answer your questions. Brendan, over to you.
Thank you, Farhan, and good afternoon, everybody.